Hi, I'm Cheryl Lee, Asian American Advertising Federation 3F board member and the executive director at Intertrend. I'm with 3F. We are the primary go-to resource when it comes to Asian advertising, Asian marketing, and the power of Asian American consumer. During this COVID-19 pandemic, we have organized a series of virtual webinars to help our community during this unprecedented time. The series covers a wide range of topics related to the pandemic and the impact on our Asian American community. We are organizing this webinar on a regular basis and hope you will tune in to participate. All of our webinars are posted on our website at www.3f.org/corona, along with other resources and helpful links on the website as well. Today, our topic is Asian Americans and COVID-19. And I'm honored here with our speaker. First, I want to introduce Tanya Raukko, Chief Strategy Officer at Intertrend in Long Beach office. We also have Anna Shea, Strategy Planning Director at the Intertrend Plano office. So and now for our very first question. Under COVID-19 pandemic, what does Intertrend's take on this and help clients to navigate through during this challenging time? Tanya, if you can start.
Yeah. Well, our agency actually did a previous study back in 2003 when the SARS epidemic was happening. Our agency also did an analysis of media coverage in California, New York, and general market media to understand the impact. So this time, back in February, we wanted to kick this off internally and see if there are interesting trends happening in terms of Asian American media consumption, in terms of where they're getting information, how they're going about finding news, which sources they trusted, what content they were looking for, and also understanding the impact of social media, which is brand new from the last time as well. And then also we noticed in March the rise of xenophobia. And so we went back to the study, it was already open, and we added some additional questions in there to gain insight.
It's great.
Yeah, so I can add on a little bit. I think, the whole Asian American community is very immigrant driven. So this whole challenge is a global challenge, and our target or our audience having a double dip, first exposed to the first wave of COVID-19 in Asia and then in United States. So they definitely have some nuanced, mindset, sentiment, and expectations from the brands. So, but that's why we're here. We connect, or consumers to the brands in the United States, and we try to always, get to know what's going on, see the trends, and connect or target to the brands.
Sounds good. So since you mentioned a little bit some primary research study Intertrend has taken on, would you be able to provide a little bit more background or overview in methodology and segment?
Sure. And if you want to pull up that slide really quick, our field work was completed back in March. So the March 14th to 28th specifically, and we got a sample of about 450. It was Chinese, Korean, and other Asian Americans, and it was conducted in both English as well as in language, Chinese and Korean. And we do feel that in language is very important. Many of the research studies that we see that our clients are doing and what the research industry is doing is very general market centric, and even if they do capture Asian, it's in English, so it's a little bit biased. So for our market, it's critical for us to understand what these consumers who depend and rely on in-language media seek during a crisis. And in addition to the Intertrend team, we also had help with Cal Poly Pomona, Asian American Transnational Research Initiative group help us. And then, so the methodology of recruiting was through community partners. And so we had a plethora of people help us in terms of getting the word out that we were conducting a survey in the community. And you can see from the data in terms of our sample profile, it was 57% female, 74% first generation, so immigrants, high education, 85% had completed college or graduate school, about half were Korean, 40% Chinese, and about 85 were in this age range of 21 to 74, so a really wide group. And most of the DMAs that people were living in, LA, New York, San Francisco, Texas, and DC. And we also, in addition to the primary research, we did a little bit of social listening in parallel to understand what people were searching for and what the buzz was in terms of content. So we used Brand24 for that and Google Trends.
Great. I think my next question definitely just want to learn more. Any insight and findings on this particularly Asian American COVID-19 research you may share?
Yeah, maybe I can start with some of the highlight, findings in terms of media consumption and media sentiment. So as Tanya mentioned, we had 450 sample size, and we fortunately covered different immigration waves from first generation to 1.5 and second. So first generation means foreign born and came to United States after 18 years old. And 1.5 is foreign born, but it came earlier in their childhood life. And second generation means American born. So you could see that because our target is quite diverse in terms of the acculturation and their immigration status, that influence how they consume media. And during the COVID-19 time, we asked them what kind of a channel or outlet you use to get the information, to get entertainment. And you can see that the ranking is slightly different, especially between first generation and the second generation. TV is the top, about 60% for first and 1.5. However, it's dropped to the second. And for first generation, a lot of immigrants came here, later in their life. They still rely a lot of on newspapers. And a lot of time it's in language. And the social media is the second for 1.5 as well as the first generation. We want to point out all Asian Americans use a lot of in-language or in-cultural social media platforms like WeChat for Chinese and like a KakaoTalk for Korean, and they really use it for news, for entertainment, for almost everything. But for second generation, they definitely use a lot of general kind of market outlets like Facebook and Instagram. So we have more detailed report. You can reach out us to get a copy or learn more about it. And move on to the next page. We definitely learned that during this special time, a lot of our Asian targets really seek out information from the in-language news outlet, just because they're very global minded, and also giving the nature of this COVID-19 is a global impact. A lot of our targets really getting more holistic perspective from both in-language, in-country news, as well as American news or media, so that they can, get a good judgment what's really going on. So that's why we see a rise in terms of consumption in language, in news, in social media, as well as in entertainment like videos and social media. And by generation, it's also very different. For our first generation immigrants, they definitely prefer more in-language news to get the stories about COVID-19. Also, they trust the in-language more compared to 1.5 and the second generation. And I will pass it to Tanya to talk about other findings.
Sure. So this is overall COVID-19 perceptions that we noticed. And I'll first talk about the social listening that we saw. We saw that Chinese Americans started talking about the virus in late December, actually. Things were peaking and the most popular posts from Asian Americans were actually in early February. So ahead of the curve for sure, because we see a lot of Asian Americans are following news, of course, in country, seeing what's happening to extended relatives, and all of the news happening. It was a frenzy at that time. So it was ahead of the American curve. So if you look at this chart, you can see at the bottom, we have it by immigration wave as well as by Chinese and Korean that we highlighted. So you can see it's first and 1.5 generation, and then the second generation, Chinese and Korean. But overall, generally, 92% of Asian Americans believed that COVID-19 was a serious problem. And again, this was early February. This was before all of the lockdowns happened. So people in America were just kind of trying to understand what was happening in general, but Asian Americans were really serious about this. And yet, only 16% of Asian Americans believed that the US was handling this crisis well. So there was very low confidence in the US response. 35% of Asian Americans were unsure of what the government was going to do. And in terms of what the government was actually communicating from the health organizations, only 24% said they do not understand what's going on and explanations about the virus. In terms of immigration generation, newer immigrants are more attuned to the disease, they're taking it more seriously, they're feeling that the US is underestimating it, and less understanding of the government information. So because many of them are taking it seriously after witnessing how the disease ravaged home countries, they just were at the top of kind of conscientiousness in terms of avoiding it and prevention as well. So if we can go on to the fear and anxiety, we see that 79% of Asian Americans report thinking about COVID very frequently or frequently. So this is very aligned to what we saw previously. In terms of fearful of getting sick from the virus, 60%. 61% say watching the news makes them fearful. And similarly, 62% worry that the virus will kill people that they care about. And when you look at it by generation, the first and 1.5 generations are thinking about it more. That's to be expected because they even are more attuned from in country. So that's 79% versus the second generations, which was about 57%. In terms of being fearful of getting the virus, again, same trend, 60% are first generation or 1.5 versus second generation, only 43% were fearful of getting the virus at this time in mid-March. Koreans had a higher concern than Chinese at this time. This was at the height of the South Korean outbreak that peaked in early March. And we also know that Asian Americans were bracing themselves for the worst to come, financially, psychologically, and operationally, in terms of like their families, their home, their businesses. So this fear really has been top of mind and really impacted their behavior. And that you see on the next slide, economic impact. So this survey shows that an overwhelming majority of Asian Americans, 78%, feel that COVID-19 will negatively affect their pocketbook. 72% believe their businesses will be adversely affected, and Asian Americans have a really high propensity for owning small businesses. 69% believe their investments will be hurt. And heavier worries are from the first generation by a factor of 1.5 over the second generation. Again, because they are attuned to the news from January and seeing the global impact. As well as our hypothesis is that maybe they are, new to the country, they're kind of building a foundation, getting settled, versus second generation may have more of a safety net, extended family. It's a little bit of our hypothesis and generalization, but that's some of what we heard on an anecdotal level. And overall, we do see that Asian Americans as a population have resilience and preparedness, much as we observed it back in the 2009 financial savings crisis. And lastly, we did add these questions, as I mentioned before, about racism and xenophobia. So Asian Americans report strong worries about racial bias affecting their communities, while many at this time had not yet experienced racial bias directly. Only 18% said that people were avoiding them due to COVID-19. We see this has escalated over time. Of course, this has been worsened by the labeling of the Chinese virus from government leaders, which led to a nationwide sense of permission to blame China and begin to engage in some of this racist behavior. And we did kind of look through social listening, and we saw that other countries were talking about the virus with different names. So more like the new coronavirus or the Wuhan virus or the new pneumonia. Those were common phrases that were searched for versus in America, the Chinese virus. In terms of stigma, we see that 49% of Chinese American respondents feel that the virus has stigmatized the Chinese, as well as 39% for the Koreans feeling that the virus has stigmatized the Koreans. So these numbers are still low compared to the intense worries about potential effect of the virus related to racial bias, because those numbers are really high. 80% of respondents feel really concerned. about that, which 71% for Chinese, 88% for Koreans worry about racial bias. And it's a serious concern because with all of those establishments and the small businesses and the communities and ethnic enclaves, restaurants and things like that, that's their lifeline and economic livelihood. So we've heard that there's been a lot of impact from those businesses even before the lockdown. So starting back in January, they've been having a huge decrease in business, which is really unfortunate.
That's great. Thank you for walking us through the extensive study. So I think my last two questions is really about, first one, does any of the research finding help with the client you're working with? Any applicable maybe campaign program you're doing and you may share?
Sure, I can start on this one. Yeah, we have many clients from, automobile to financial services and, food. Yeah, clients reach out to us in this very unique time because everything happens overnight and everything changes overnight. So how to really, understand what's going on in our Asian American community is very critical for a lot of brands that because their business is heavily dependent on those target. So like, for example, Toyota, we've been using all the insights we collected, through our research and through our community, just, connection to help them build the campaigns during COVID-19 and plan for post-COVID-19. I think a lot of learnings really helped to craft the strategy and the creative directions.
Any tips and strategy you would recommend for our marketer advertiser to do next, especially in multicultural Asian American segment? So Tanya, maybe you can take this one.
Yeah, I think at Intertrend, just the importance of Asian American consumer set. This is the time really to springboard to do more. We can acknowledge, or the brands can acknowledge, that everyone has been experiencing this challenging environment, but especially the Asian Americans. I think there hasn't been a lot of general market news coverage of those small businesses that I was speaking about being impacted way back since January. And so brands, whatever they can do to be able to assist small businesses. We've seen some of our clients, reach out to do like local level community outreach, little ways to help and provide tools and resources. Also, not forgetting to reward loyalty. So a lot of these consumers, because saving is such a big core value for Asian Americans, they have been saving. We do expect them to be resilient and springing back quicker with some level of consumerism across brand and industries, and continue to speak to them in media that they appreciate. As Anna was presenting earlier, the large impact of in-language media is very important and resonates with them in terms of just channel and then messaging resonance. And then lastly, I think most importantly is the racism issue. So this is something that's really unique for Asian Americans. It's more prolific than I've ever seen before. It's top of mind. There's a sense of a lot of emotions within the Asian American community about that in terms of like disbelief and anger and fear, sensitivity. So if brands can continue to show support to this group and solidarity, that's really important. So that can come across at a brand level or even at kind of customer service outreach levels. Something that we're doing internally at Intertrend is we're launching a new campaign called Make Noise Today. This is launching for the May month, which is Asian Heritage Month. And we'll actually have more kind of public relations about this, and we'll probably do something with their AF, hopefully, to share about this campaign. But basically what it is we wanted to get just general Americans to have a changed narrative about what Asian Americans are and what they represent, and see us as humanized through real personal stories of people that are out there accomplishing amazing things, contributing to society, as well as everyday heroes. There's a lot of Asian Americans on the front line in the medical and health field. So we just wanted to highlight these stories and continue this as a movement to change the story about us as a cultural group and bringing in our cultural heritage and sharing some of the pride in that too.
So that was my last question, and this concludes today's webinar. I want to thank our speaker, Tanya, Chief Strategy Officer, Anna, Strategy Planning Director at Intertrend, for their time and expertise today. I also want to remind our viewers to visit the 3AF website at www.3af.org, and especially our resource page at www.3af.org/corona for helpful links related to surviving COVID-19. In addition, we here at 3AF need your help. So we have created a 3AF GoFundMe page if you want to help Asian American Advertising Federation continue to help our community. Stay safe and healthy, everyone, and thank you for watching. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.